It's a backlash in typical Greek fashion. Thousands of people strike against unpopular austerity measures. Is this the price they'll have to pay for international support? I'm Imran Garta, and today's newsmaker is Greece's austerity backlash. It seems like the Greek tragedy that never ends. The story starts with new austerity measures, protesters pouring onto the streets, which ultimately spirals into violence. And to make matters worse, Greece's essential services have been paralyzed. Crucial workers, from air traffic controllers to civil servants and police, all took part in a general strike. They're pushing back against the latest round of austerity measures. The cuts will save the government billions of dollars starting in 2018. But at the cost of lower pensions and other slashed benefits. Will this latest round of belt-tightening push Greece over the edge, or is the country starting to accept a future on the margins? Randolph Nogel tells us what's at stake.
It's a scene that's become all too familiar. Violent protests in Greece against further austerity cuts. Like in the past, the measures are needed to release the latest round of bailout funds. 8 years into the Greek debt tragedy, many here now think austerity only further diminishes the country's sovereignty by prolonging dependence on its creditors.
Κατά όλων των εργαζομένων και των συνταξιούχων για να φέρει περισσότερα πλούτη στους δανειστές τη στιγμή που ο κόσμος πεινάει.
The left-wing Syriza party, led by Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras, swept to power in 2015 on an anti-austerity platform. But forced to make concession after concession or risk default and a possible Grexit, the party has fallen out of favor with its base. Now, that scenario has resurfaced in the form of a more than $8 billion debt payment deadline in July.
Παρά τις δυσκολίες και τις καθυστερήσεις που προκλήθηκαν από παράλογες απαιτήσεις εκ μέρους των δανειστών καθ' όλη τη διάρκεια των διαπραγματεύσεων, η τεχνική συμφωνία είναι εν τέλει ισορροπημένη και βιώσιμη.
The latest deal would ensure that Greece can meet its debt payment. But to do so, the government will have to make cuts from 2018 to 2021, worth $5.4 billion. They'll affect Greece's social safety net, including pensions. But the goal is to produce savings equal to 2% of Greece's GDP and meet a target of 3.5% of GDP primary surplus. If Greece can do that, a set of measures meant to offset the impact of additional austerity, including lowering taxes, is meant to then take effect. But many Greeks feel they've already reached a breaking point. Nearly 1 in 4 are unemployed, while jobless rates for the youth are closer to 1 in 2. And while Athens was slowed for a moment as protesters' anger spread across the city, in the corridors of power, lawmakers moved ahead with plans. Plans which many see as part of a never-ending cycle of sacrifice that has eroded Greece's working class. Randolph Nogel, The Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss what this all means for Greece, I'm joined by Panagiotis Petrakis. He's a professor of economics at the University of Athens. In Brussels, Petros Fasoulas. He's the Secretary General of European Movement International. And we have sociology professor Kostas Panagiotakis from City University of New York. He's the author of Remaking Scarcity: From Capitalist Inefficiency to Economic Democracy. Gentlemen, thank you all for joining us. Panagiotis Petrakis, let me begin with you. We have protests, we have strikes, a lot of angry Greeks. How angry are Greeks compared to the anger of recent years?
Well, I think the angriness, it's a common phenomenon under an austerity program. And we are now in the 7th year of recession. Therefore, I think it's a very normal situation in any case. The improvements they are obvious, but they are very slow. Therefore, it was normal to expect some clashes as the ones that we saw yesterday.
Okay, Kostas Panagiotakis, is it still the prevailing sentiment that austerity is unfair?
Yeah, I think people feel that this austerity program has been very unjust, and people are suffering a lot. Inequality and poverty have increased, so has unemployment. The social effects of these policies are really devastating, and the economic effects are also very dubious because it's supposed to be a debt crisis, and this austerity program has actually increased the ratio between the Greek debt and GDP. So things are very bad, and people hear politicians talking about growth, and they've heard that for a long time, and they haven't seen it really happen.
Okay, so Petros, we have Kostas saying, yes, there's social anger, there's social pain, but then the economics don't even work, and there's no real economic impact. Do you agree with him?
Unfortunately, these things take quite a long time, and those that are less deserving are the ones that suffer the most. We are in a situation where what's going on is in many ways inevitable. It's a result of a long period of economic mismanagement, and there is really very little else that can be done apart from the fact that all the pain has been stacked up at the beginning of the process, and a lot of the gain will only be left later down the line. And perhaps that's the one area where both the Greek governments, the successive Greek governments who have been operating under these bailout regimes, and the Greece's European partners could have perhaps instilled a bit more of impetus, of growth impetus in the process, including the possibility of substantial debt relief, which I believe will be on the cards again later this year once all the national electoral circles are complete.
Yeah, it's interesting. The IMF and Eurozone not necessarily on the same page. Some Eurozone member states saying no debt relief is required, give us back our money. There's a general election coming up in Germany. All that sort of internal stuff going on within the European Union. Kostas, let me pose the point that Petros made. Take your medicine now. It's going to be painful now, but it will be much better later on. What do you think?
Well, he was saying that, it's inevitable these things take time. John Maynard Keynes, the great economist from the 20th century, said, in the long term, we are all dead. And this may sound like a witticism when Keynes said it, but in reality, austerity has killed people in Greece, in terms of the healthcare system, in terms of, stress, suicide. So, I think saying that things will take a long time, it's more like a justification for continuing the same kind of policies than something that can contribute to a real solution. Many of the things that we were told would help to fix the situation, like, reducing labor protections, making the labor market more flexible. We were said this would reduce, we were told this would reduce unemployment. Well, unemployment has gone up since many of these measures were taken.
Okay.
So I think...
Let's ask Panayotis. Panayotis, this is the 13th cut in pensions since 2010. Do the pensioners really deserve this?
Sorry, can you repeat, please?
This is the 13th cut in pensions since 2010. Do Greek pensioners deserve this?
Well, look, the problem with the pensioners is a very complex one, and it does not necessarily, it is connected with the memorandum problem and it is connected with the bankruptcy of the past, of 2010, but now it is reshaping because the aging and because the flee of the youth to the Europe. Therefore, we are continuous having this problem in front of us, and with some way, we should find a way to finance the pensions. It's not an easy problem to solve it because there are more than one reasons that it continues operate on that. Mm-hmm. Therefore, there are unless As development will come back, I don't think that the pensions situation will be improved.
Okay, and now let me just shift this slightly away from the economics to the politics of it all. Kostas, do you feel let down by Prime Minister Alexis Tsipras and Syriza?
Well, I think they basically joined the austerity bandwagon. They got elected promising that they would reverse austerity, but they promised to do it within the frame of the Eurozone, and they claimed that this was possible. And I think when they realized that this was not possible, they made the choice. They prioritized staying within the Eurozone rather than ending austerity. So I think the main contribution that Syriza has made is to put to the test the proposition of whether it is possible to reverse austerity within the Eurozone, and now we know the answer.
Kostas, isn't it more plausible that they said a lot of big things when they were in opposition, then they came to power, and then invariably when you come to power you have to be more pragmatic because you're dealing with the books, you have the key to the bank account, and they had to be pragmatic and not risk the economic future of their country? Isn't that a more plausible answer?
Well, I think they're risking the economic future of their country right now, and it's not even the future; it's the present. And these effects, these measures, are not really helping the economy, and they're just continuing the same kind of failed recipes. And these are the recipes that the IMF and the European technocrats said they would produce positive results. They haven't produced those results. Their sort of predictions have been disproved again and again, and yet they continue the same recipe because their priority is not the welfare of Greek people. Their priority is to make sure that foreign creditors get their money back.
Okay.
That's the record of the IMF, even outside.
Yeah, so let me ask you a question before I pose your answer to Petros. Kostas, let me ask you, the European creditors, the IMF, the European technocrats, as you call them, the Eurozone, have they been fair to Greece at all?
Well, I mean, this is not about fairness. This is about the pursuit of their interest. I mean, you know, to tell you the truth, I don't feel disappointed by the IMF. I mean, I'm not surprised by what has happened to Greece. You know, knowing the history of the IMF and what it has done in other parts of the world, you know, this is the same scenario. The new thing, of course, is that now it is being applied to a supposedly, you know, a sort of more industrialized, affluent country like Greece. And the paradox, of course, is that Greece is being turned into a third world country so that it can stay in Europe. It's very ironic.
Okay, so Petros, Greece is being turned into a third world country so it can stay in Europe. All those other players are just milking Greece for all it's worth. They don't care about Greece. What do you think?
I think we have to look at what has happened over the last years into the context of what was possible within the framework of the European Union. I think Greece was bankrupt for far too long, and it was operating on credit unsubstantially, and when that credit ran out, there was a clear choice to be made whether the country should be allowed to default with all the economic and social hardship that comes with it, or whether the country should be protected from that cliff edge scenario and kept within the family of the European Union with all the benefits that comes with it. There were no easy solutions. There were going to be cost and casualties in both cases. It is clear that the lesser of all evils was to ensure that Greece remained part of the European Union and the single currency by extension. I will agree that the remedies put in place weren't necessarily the best, but the patient remains alive and within the context of the EU. So the bigger issue here is to what degree the European Union as a framework and the Eurozone as a common currency has the necessary structures to deal with situations like this, when a part of it falls into such a situation, loses competitiveness, and risks the possibility of default. And unfortunately, the necessary structures were not in place to address such a situation, and the European institutions and European leaders were as generous as they could be within the framework that was available to them. Going forward, what the European Union and the Eurozone in particular needs is the necessary structures to ensure that when a member state, when a part of the Eurozone gets into trouble, it can be supported in a much more efficient and appropriate way.
Okay, and now I want to ask Professor Petrakis his opinion on what he thinks about the kind of social movements that are happening in the country and have been happening over the past few years. We're seeing some movement on the extremes. I remember reading 5 years ago that more than 50% of the police in Athens had been supporters of Golden Dawn on the far right. Police were part of the protests just in the past couple of days in Thessaloniki and Athens and so on. We're seeing anarchist letter bombers. We're seeing all sorts of political movements on the fringes. Are you worried about the political future of your country, sir?
No. Those are phenomena that they are connected with the nature of the crisis. The financial nature of the crisis, we knew since 2008 that should expect that it will have such repercussions. It is expected after 8 to 10 years after the crisis will erupt that those movements on the right and on the extreme lefts, but more on the right, should find a way out. And this is something that we observe all over Europe. I think it's we know the phenomenon, we know what is going on, we know that we should expect something like that, but I think now we're in a turning point, not only in Greece, but in all of Europe, and we'll see in the near future more on that.
What gives you, sorry to interrupt you, what gives you such cause for optimism? What gives you such cause for optimism? Is it seeing someone like Macron getting elected in France? Is it seeing the center coming back? What is it?
It is not only Macron, it's Spain, it's in Austria. There are a lot of, but we know that if there are a lot of research doing that on this field, and we know that those changes we should expect those changes to take place, and I think we are online. But look, it is not something that we can predict that those phenomena will eliminate in the near future. We don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I think they are normal. They are connected very close with the nature of the crisis. The financial crisis. They have a period of elimination like something between 8 to 12 years. And it is very normal because if you try to manage such a crisis, then we end up with making favors to the banking sector. And this is makes angry the people. And this is
right.
Something observe.
Okay, so that's a good point.
Kostas,
are you willing to trust this government with the 86 billion euro to make things right?
No, I don't, but I want to say something. I mean, I know I've seen Mr. Petrakis before. He's a very respected commentator. He's not extreme in any kind of way, but he keep using the word normal about the rise of Golden Dawn, which is a neo-Nazi party. It's the third largest party in the Greek parliament. There is nothing normal about this. When this happens, nobody expected Golden Dawn would be the third largest party just a few years ago.
Yep.
So this tells you something about what these austerity measures are producing, and this tells you something about the capitalist economic system that creates this kind of phenomena. Greece is a country that suffered terribly from the Nazis.
Sure, good point. So, Professor Petrakis, why are you calling it normal that these neo-Nazis
are coming around? This is not a normal situation.
First of all, I have to say that after 7 years of depression, I find very, very many things as normal. Sorry for that. But concerning the role of the Golden Dawn, I have to say that we are not sure that it is any more third party. This is something that we have to take in mind. Fortunately for the democracy, there are a lot of movements and change in this field. We'll see in the near future what's going to happen. I think it is nothing. It is not normal to have fascist ideas to come up again. Of course, it is not normal, but unfortunately, there are certain things that take place. And, you know, in some countries, those phenomena are more serious. I'm speaking about North Europe, and, right. You know, I don't want to refer to such specific countries, but of course, we are facing with the failures of the policies that were implemented in Greece. It is, and I want to comment on before, it was not a fairness or unfairness of the IMF, but it was, there were mistakes, and we know all these mistakes. We know those mistakes now. Okay. And I'm sure that if we live again, they will not make the same, but they happen.
Okay, so austerity has been around for a while. Greeks have been tightening their belts, 86 billion euros being unlocked. Let's see if this helps the economy and helps Greek society. Interesting to see how this plays out politically as well. Lots to talk about over the coming months and maybe even years. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure picking your brains and talking about Greece. Thanks so much for coming on the program. I've got to wrap. Bye-bye. Still to come on the Newsmakers, disgruntled soldiers across Ivory Coast return to base, but have the cracks in loyalty already made their mark? And the internet as we know it could be in for a major shakeup that might leave users and content creators at the losing end. It was once a model for stability in West Africa until civil war tore the country apart in 2002. But the Ivory Coast was inching towards a more stable future after fighting ended in 2011. That calm was shaken just days ago after soldiers demanding bonuses took over a major city. Although the crisis seems to have been diffused with a deal between the government and mutineers, there's an uneasiness still lingering across the country. Ali Mustafa has more.
Mutineers celebrate on the streets of Ivory Coast. Days after their revolt, the government agreed to a peace deal.
En vue d'éviter tout enlisement et plus d'endeuillement de famille, l'état-major général des armées a entrepris des échanges avec les soldats hier, dimanche 14 mai, et ce lundi 15 mai 2017. À l'issue de ces échanges, un accord a été trouvé sur les modalités de sortie de crise.
The mutiny began on Friday after soldiers seized the second largest city. They were demanding unpaid bonuses.
On n'a pas envie de désobéir à Alassane Dramane Ouattara. On veut travailler lui. Mais s'il a envie de travailler nous là, il ne faut pas qu'il va écouter les ministres salauds qui sont à côté de lui.
The uprising caught the government by surprise, possibly because of who carried it out. The culprits were the same rebels who brought President Alassane Ouattara to power. Ivory Coast was once a beacon of stability in Western Africa, until civil war broke out in 2002. State institutions were decimated, leaving a dangerous power vacuum. Hardest hit was the security apparatus, opening the door for groups like Al-Qaeda in the Islamic Maghreb. The terror group has carried out a wave of attacks in recent years, leaving dozens dead.
Je confirme mon accord.
But in 2011, President Alassane Ouattara rode to victory with the help of his rebel army, ending a decade of bloodshed. Thousands of those men now make up a significant part of Ivory Coast's military. But their show of disloyalty has revealed cracks in the state, where threat of another coup remains a reality. Ali Mustafa, the Newsmakers.
Well, to discuss the fractures in Ivory Coast military, I'm joined from Washington by Nyaka Lagoke. He's the president of the Revival of Pan-Africanism Forum. And from Abidjan, the economic hub of Ivory Coast, is Arsène Brice-Bardot. He's a political analyst and the deputy director at the Institute for Dignity and Human Rights. Gentlemen, thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Nyaka Lagoke, let me start with you. So we've had a peaceful resolution. Is this done? Will we not see this happen again?
Thank you very much for the opportunity that you give me, and your question make me laugh. Of course, you know that it is not going to be the end. It is just another episode, and then because there are various groups in the army, the one that just finished that mutiny is composed of 8,400 soldiers, and a few days ago, before that group, there was another group composed of 6,500. And then we know, for instance, that in January, the special forces in Ivory Coast, they also did a mutiny, and then they received the bonuses. So there are other groups that will be coming, and it's just another episode that we see.
Okay, so Arsène, I'm trying to do the mathematics here. I'm not a mathematician. So 22,000 strong army, 8,400 mutineers now, and as Nyaka mentioned, 6,500 before, plus special forces. That means it's more than half of the army has been unhappy in recent times, and he believes this is probably just the beginning or just another episode. Do you agree?
Yes, I do agree. I hope that it will be the end, but what we have to know is that there is a discontentment within the army. As he has pointed, although the former rebel army has been integrated to the national army, it seems like they still are two different or many different armies with different advantages, different bonuses. So this raises some issues for the future of the army.
Yeah,
and we
questions.
may witness some discontentment in the future.
Okay, so they were loyal to